Wednesday to the world out there. And gentlemen, welcome back.
Hello there.
Greetings.
Hello there.
We are here to bring you some Seahawks fantastic news. The Seahawks are 8-2, ladies and gentlemen.
That is good news.
I thought you were going to say Jamar Taylor was cut.
That's other news. I wouldn't say that's excellent news. That's kind of like good news because we're excited for what can be as opposed to what was. But speaking of what was, before the last Seahawks game, before the game that I thought the Seahawks were going to lose, there was an undefeated team still left in the NFL. Can you believe that?
The mighty have fallen.
It's incredible, right? Like, we knew that they might not be as good as the record was because of who they played and things like that, but still, like once you get to like anything beyond 5, like something in O really kind of weighs on your mind, right? It just gets sort of intimidating. Oh, they're 8-0. They're 8-0. It can't be a fluke anymore. They're 8-0. But you know what? Pete Carroll, not intimidating.
And I think the one thing is I want to say is I do want to give credit to the San Francisco 49ers. It was an impressive team. I thought they did a lot of things really well. I think there's a lot of things on that team that is definitely legit. I still think they have some questions. And it doesn't mean the Seahawks don't have questions, but for a currently 9-1 team, I don't think they're a total mirage, but I think we are going to learn a lot more in these next few weeks for them because it is a rough schedule comparative to, what the Seahawks are going to face, which is also still a very rough schedule coming up.
I mean, they're saying the 49ers are facing a historically tough run in the next 3 games, right?
Yeah, and a part of that's because the Seahawks are still 8-2, and they have to play the Seahawks one more time to finish out the year.
True, but I mean, like even the next 3 games before us are 8-2 opponents, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's like a historic stretch if people stay in that range. So bad luck to them.
Yeah, for real.
There's opportunity to catch up ground. I mean, like if the Seahawks are back to controlling their own destiny.
It's a really interesting situation that the Seahawks find themselves, and we're going to talk a lot about what happened in that game in our topics. But the Seahawks, in the way that game came out, it's hard because we're already a week removed from that Monday night game, but here we are, and we're seeing like totally different scheme in regards to what happened to like, oh, how good are the Seahawks versus, oh wow, how good are the Seahawks?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny like how fickle everybody is, but that one win it's. I saw power ratings that put the Seahawks at number 2 after that win, at least one.
I mean, I might be a little high, but I'll take it.
I don't know, man. There's not a lot of like dominant teams around this year, are there?
No, there's not.
Who's better than Seattle? For sure.
I mean, I don't know.
Patriots. New Orleans looks really good.
The 2 teams that we lost to are potentially be better than us.
I feel like a rematch versus the Ravens goes very different. Not that they didn't deserve to win the first time and they weren't the better team the first time, but it feels like something like a learning experience.
For sure.
I don't think that'll happen again.
It also feels like they've gotten better since then. So
it's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, like it just feels like they're just running. I mean, like nobody's be able to cope with Lamar.
Yeah, they're just clobbering teams now. I'd love to see them in the Super Bowl. That'd be fantastic.
But the question of like who is great, Tommy legit chiming in saying the Ravens and the Saints are also 2 great teams, happen to be the 2 teams that the Seahawks have lost to. But I think the other thing you have to look at is like the season is never about what did you do in week 3, what did you do in week 4, what did you do in week 10. It's like, what are you doing going into the playoffs?
Yep.
And there's still 6 games left for a lot of teams, and so much could change. Tommy bringing in the Packers. The Packers are another good team. The thing is, each of these teams have had a dud game so far. The Ravens have lost to the Browns, the Saints have lost to the Falcons, and the Packers just lost. Who did the Packers lose to recently? The Chargers.
The Chargers, yeah.
And if you were to tell me of the 3 teams that those teams have lost to, Browns, Falcons, and Chargers, Atlanta's probably the worst of those teams, followed by the Chargers. Maybe you could make a case for the Chargers being worse than the Falcons because the Chargers, they were losing with Phillip Rivers. He just threw a 4 interception game. The Browns are kind of up and down, so maybe you say that's not bad of a loss, but those are all 3 bad losses that those teams faced, So each team has an ugly loss right now. There's not a team that's like resoundingly like still ahead. Even to the Niners' credit, their worst and only loss of the year is against an 8-2 Seattle team.
It's true.
So it feels that more than most years, there's like the bad teams are really bad this year, right?
The bad teams are really bad because you've got 3 legit terrible teams in the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Jets, and maybe you throw Washington in there as well.
What's funny is like 2 of those teams are trying to tank, and the other one's not, and you really can't distinguish. Like when you're doing just as bad as teams purposely like setting up their roster to fail, like that's not a great sign for your general manager. But in addition to like that set of like really weak teams, there's, like I said, it's hard to say who the super elite are, but there's like a clear tier 1 this year. And there's a clear bottom tier, and then there's a lot of junk in the middle. But it seems like
the thing about the junk in the middle is the junk in the middle, they're still like scary, right? Because the 5-5 teams right now, you've got the Eagles, you've got the Steelers, you've got the Browns.
Panthers.
Rams are 6-4.
The Rams are 6-4. So you've got a lot of teams that are kind of in that middling 500 record. That bodes well for those teams to make a late push and try and squeak in at maybe, 9-7, 10-6, because that's still in the realm of possibility for a lot of teams now.
I don't think 9-7 is going to do it. There's just too many teams at 8-2.
I think you're right in that there's not a lot of teams, but there's teams like the
Steelers
Cowboys.
seem to be starting.
The Cowboys are 6-4, and they're leading their division, right?
But by 1 game,
right? And then that's the same for a lot of teams over like Kansas City is 6-4. I think Oakland's 6-4, right? So it's not like the AFC West is like running away with it right now either. So there are division opportunities that maybe we wouldn't think that that's how you're going to make your hay. But there are teams that they're not out of the division. They maybe are out of it for the wild card, especially in the NFC, because there are a lot of teams that are plus 7 wins. But on that AFC side, they've got also bad divisions too. Like the Buffalo Bills are 7-3 right now.
Yep.
They're a front runner for the wild card. But if New England falters, the AFC West all of a sudden could be potentially for grid. I know that's kind of a pipe dream, but that's kind of what's happening, and that's why I think those middling 500 teams could cause a lot of problems. So it'll be interesting. But to your point,
they can, but they don't scare me right now. Like
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Even the 7th, there's not that many 7 and whatever teams, but like the 7-3, 7-4, 8-2s, those all like not scare me, but I put some thought, I put some concern. I think that's a close game, but all those 5-5, 6-4 teams seem really, really, not that we don't seem flawed, but they seem more deeply flawed. You know what I mean?
I think
that's
true.
These are the teams that get above over 500 because of their quarterback only, and that's great for regular season, but doesn't take you far in the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, like, some of them are fading, some of them are rising, some are just getting used to the personnel. Like Pittsburgh, I think, had to deal with their injuries, and now they got the injuries sorted out. They've got some pretty capable coaching and figuring out how to get the best out of what they've got left. The Rams, they're just fading, right?
They're fading, but they also just won a game, right? So
yeah, I mean,
and that's the thing. It's not that like teams are like getting blown out, especially those 500 teams. None of them are really getting blown out, so they're gonna be like 500 for the rest of the year. But you don't want to be the team that faces them when they're 7-8 trying to get to 500 and you're in their way.
True.
And I think that's what makes them potentially dangerous. Not that they're scary or that they're like a threat to your, playoff run, but they're just like these speed bumps. And sometimes those speed bumps can catch up. I mean, how many times have the Seahawks lost to a shitty Cardinals team or a shitty Rams team in a game that was like the last 2 weeks of the year? Kind of like, well, hopefully we run away with this game, but it didn't happen,
Very true. Good points. Good point.
All right. Well, let's get going. But the Seahawks return from the bye to travel east to face the Philadelphia Eagles, but they've been unceremoniously booted from Sunday night because, frankly, the Eagles suck. With the time off, the Seahawks can reflect on their latest win, but face a gauntlet of competition with 5 of their opponents, 5 of the next 6 opponents with a 500 record or better. This is a Hawkscast podcast brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum. Check us out at hawkscast.com, on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast or Seahawks Forum. Gentlemen, I want to talk more in depth about topic number 1. And Zeb, topic number 1 is, was this the signature win the Seahawks needed to show the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part it is. It lacks kind of the polish of what you'd want from a signature win. Like, you'd kind of like to be a little closer than could have lost if they'd made that last field goal. But I think for the most part, people that watched the game saw the Seahawks bring a level of physicality to the 49ers that they haven't seen yet this year, and just kind of prove to be the better, stronger team that night. And I think most people watching saw that and realized that's what was happening. So I would say that at this point that you could call this the signature win that kind of propelled the Seahawks up the power rankings a bit.
If you were to say that because it's the best win and the signature win of the year, what is the moment that you would highlight or hallmark in that game?
I don't know about a specific moment, but I think the fact that that Russell threw his first pick in a while, and it looked like the game was going to be over, and they were able to still do a whole nother drive down and win it in the end, I think just shows the kind of guts that not only is this team capable of showing, but Russell in particular.
Ross, what was your thoughts? Is this something that you needed the NFL to see to show that the Seahawks are really deserving of their 8-2 record?
To be honest, in the last few weeks, the fact that most people kind of suck and that coverage of sports is kind of shallow-esque because we all can't be emotionally invested in everything kind of shows up. And so, yeah, it points to the fact that this victory was needed because everybody knew there was the 1-8-0 team left and we win, and that's all that matters. People aren't going to go into so many of the details. I mean, the more knowledgeable the fan, the less important the actual win was. But since most of the NFL and most of the public is kind of casual at best, I have fantasy football, not co-teamers, but people in my fantasy football leagues who literally are surprised, to find out that Luke Wilson's on the Seahawks again. So yeah, the average knowledge of the average fan is not great. So it seems really, really significant to them. And then you can get into arguing whether it's a signature win because, like Zeb said, it wasn't like we went out and kicked their butts. It was a close game. I think when it all it's all said and done for the regular season, it's all going to come down to the last game of the season, and that's actually going to look like a signature win. When we get to play them again, and it's going to be for the NFC West Championship. It's going to be in our stadium this time with a bit of a learning curve, having faced them this year before. Then I think we put them down and put people on notice that we're the team to beat in the playoffs.
I think that's probably a really huge thing that could happen, where it's the last game of the year determines who's at the top of the NFC West and who's not. I
think the score is kind of set.
I do agree with you. I think for the moment that while we're talking about something that happened a week ago in games, there's a lot of momentum that has basically been lost because when you are the last game of the week, you open yourself to so much more discussion and so much more scrutiny and so much more interest because nothing happened before then. That, the games have already happened. No one wants to talk about a game already. It's the most recent thing in people's mind. And I think to Zeb's point, one of the things about this game, the signature moment, was that pick that Russell Wilson threw. And it's one of those plays that you think like, oh man, like I know I know what you're trying to do, and you think that Russ is going to hit on that throw, but he just a little bit underthrew that. And if he throws it like an inch, 2 inches tighter, that's a ball at the 1 yard line, and that's an easy win. I felt that because of the moment, because it was a Monday night game, that it was that at the end of it, it was their signature win. But I definitely did not think that they were winning multiple times throughout that game. Unlike Birdfinger, I didn't have a red zone to distract me because it was only game on, but I was really nervous. They were down 10-0 into that game, and I know a lot of people are saying, hey, you know what, with the Seahawks, you just kind of disregard the first quarter because they only play 3 quarters of football. Until that huge play by Clowney and Jaron Reed, I was really worried. So I was very surprised that they were able to come out with a win. I thought as soon as Geno Smith called heads at the coin toss for overtime and they got the ball, I thought they were going to win the game at that moment. And that interception just killed me.
Okay, 30 seconds on the coin toss. Did you hear heads or tails?
So what's funny is I heard it multiple times. And at different times, like initially I would hear tails, but then every subsequent time I heard it afterwards, all I heard was heads.
Huh. What did you hear?
I heard heads live. The only time I heard tails is when it felt like somebody was trying to convince me it was tails.
Yeah.
Really? Because I heard tails live.
Really?
And I know I did. I'm not convincing myself later because I know it, because when he said tails, I actually thought to myself, you fool, you always call heads, right? I mean, like... And then the ref says heads, and I'm like, ah. And then he goes, Seattle gets the ball. And I'm like, all right. If nobody else notices, I guess we get away with one.
So
I mean, like with Sherm standing right there,
right?
Like, if it was wrong, he would have said something.
Exactly.
For sure.
I heard it wrong, but I don't know how or why. It's bizarre.
So what a lot of people have said is that the mic feed between the head official, it was reverberating through the stadium, and that's why it sounded like that. But
right, so what? But why does head sound exactly like tails? Of all the other words it could sound like, it doesn't sound like spaghetti or tacos or whatever. Why does it sound like tails?
It's because the last thing the ref said is this is heads, this is tails, and he says heads right away, and tails is reverberating through the mic. It's actually coming out through the PA system.
No, that's not exactly why. Because I hear him say this is heads, this is tails. And then I hear it doesn't quite get caught up in the mic fully, but I hear him go tails. I'm like, oh
no, I totally hear what you're saying, because I definitely thought did I hear head? Did I hear tails? But once I went to Game Pass and I replayed that moment multiple times, and every time afterwards I've only heard head. So I know what you're saying.
I can hear both now.
I've heard both, but initially it was tails, and then I've only heard heads ever since then.
I've played it for 3 people, and it's they 2 of them heard heads, 1 of them heard tails.
It's one of the. Is this a blue and white striped dress or a gold and black and white striped dress?
For visual acuity, that makes sense though. But for audio, it's somebody needs to study this. Zeb, get on that.
Laurel, Yanni. Remember Laurel and Yanni? Laurel.
Yeah.
Yanni. How does that work? What's that all about?
But I think it also adds just another element to this game, because what it is it just kind of just adds to that Monday mystique. And the thing is, after that game, everyone hands down said this was the best game of the year. There was so much contested in that game. It was an aggressive, it was a fun game, it was so much back and forth. There was just so many things that were done so entertainingly that's all everyone could talk about. Everything it just lived up to what a Monday night game, what people want it to be. There was scoring, there was defense, There's big hits, there's big plays, there's oh wow, did that really happen? Like it's everything you would want in a fun, entertaining football game, and the Seahawks come out ahead on that. What more could you ask for?
Not much.
Final thoughts on this signature game, this signature win for the Seahawks.
Felt great. Felt great to go down there and hand them their first loss. It definitely kind of had that feel of the old rivalry being back, so that makes me pretty happy.
That's for sure true. Like, I don't know, like the NFC West feels so much better when there's a solid rivalry with the 49ers. And even when like Arizona or the Rams are good, somehow a rivalry with the 49ers feels better.
Yeah.
I was going to say that too. I don't know why, but I agree with you. I think if we have to pick a team to be a real rival to us, I much prefer the 49ers over the Rams or the Cardinals.
Me too, and I have no idea why.
I think don't it's because know why. Maybe they're like more storied, like they have a richer history, and it's just kind of more fun. But I think they were also the most consistently good of any of the other two teams in the division. I think that has added to it.
I feel also like they're held in a bit more prestige now because of the recent history. Like San Francisco's been in San Francisco for a really, really long time. Arizona Cardinals have moved around a bit, and now you're in a city where they don't really have much of a like organic home base. The Rams like are back now in LA after going here and there, and it just feels like sort of almost de-establishes you. Even though they've got a long history as well, but it just it's sort of, I don't know, like when you're one of those teams that sort of feels mercenary-ish, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I also think that Seattle and San Francisco are two cities that kind of maybe have a little more in common, where, you know, Los Angeles is its own country. And
right. True.
What's Arizona?
I think that's a really good point. Like people in the city of Seattle, a lot of them have lived in San Francisco. A lot of San Francisco people live in Seattle, so there's that natural rivalry because the citizens there's a mixture of that, whereas I don't really think about people from Phoenix, Arizona, or from LA. Like I think about, oh yeah, this is my buddy from the Bay Area, or that's my coworker that's a big Niners fan. Like that's much more prevalent to me for sure.
And the fact that the Niners have fans all over the place, and I don't think the Rams or the Cardinals have a fan base that can really compare.
No, not at all. All right, well, let's move on here, and let's talk about topic number 2. So, Ross, I know you've been chomping at the bit to talk about this, and what I want to know is the defense finally gelling, or was this just a rivalry game? What was your take on how disruptive that Seahawks defense was against that really, really strong San Francisco running game?
Partly, I think it was a matchup. I mean, where we can be strong and where they can be weak, and some kind of game planning. I think they had an idea that Garoppolo can be rattled. And I mean, by the end of the game, that really showed. Like, he was like 1 for his last 7 attempts once they were just kind of teeing off on him. So that was part of it. But also, we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, and I felt that once the second half of the season comes along, I thought they were going to start opening the defensive playbook open a little bit more, calling things a little bit different, and especially seeing some different personnel out there. And bringing in the new safety helped a lot. He had a pick immediately. And I don't think he had any stats to really make it up, but like just to indicate that there are like opening the playbook and opening possibilities. We had Shaquem rushing the passer, taking away snaps from Ziggy Ansov, of all people. Gosh, how far is Ziggy Ansov fall? That he's losing snaps to Shaquem, who we thought may not make the roster in August.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought it was a combination of and I think Pete Carroll kind of does this every year, and we're seeing it again today. Like today, we hear Jamar Taylor's out, and it looks like it's going to be Udo. I just forgot his name. The rookie safety.
Ugo?
Yeah.
Ugo Amadi.
Amadi.
Yeah, it looks like, Amadi's going to be in it. I mean, it was kind of he put Jamar Taylor on notice for one day, right? Yesterday was all that Amadi's made huge progress, and the next day Taylor's cut. So I feel like Carroll tends to do this every year. There's some big changes that happen sort of once you get to the second half of the season. He's gonna, he holds things tight to his vest, close to his vest in the first half of the season, and then now we're gonna see the real defense. So I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's some of your division better, but I think that he's willing to get more exotic now. He takes the first 8 games and sort of evaluates from that, doesn't he?
Yep.
Yeah. And we said that specifically, and it seemed to be sort of true.
Zeb, what about you? What was your takeaway from this defense? Is this something you think we're going to see again, or is it just a one-game occurrence?
I sure hope so. I was blown away by it. I did not expect that much of a marked improvement over what we've seen the rest of this season. That was probably the closest thing to a Legion of Boom caliber defensive performance that we've had in the last few seasons. So
5 sacks.
Right. And just hitting hard and just being bullies, not that you want players to get hurt, but we're knocking guys out.
Yeah.
I mean?
And
that's the defense you want to see. That's what you want to see. And I don't know. I think I mentioned this on the last episode before that game, that I really believed that Pete Carroll was going to make it a point to make sure that the guys were up for this game, make sure that they knew how important this game really was. And after seeing the way that they came out and played, I have to believe that was the case. They must have had this game circled on the calendar. You know what I mean? So if the defense can even play anywhere near that level for the rest of the season, I think that automatically just makes this team so much better and so much harder to beat. We were talking about the defense being bad this first half of the season. You know what I mean?
I mean, for the year, they're still pretty awful.
Yeah. So
it wasn't just bad; it was the way of being bad. They just felt so passive and just waiting for things to happen. And that's not what they're supposed to be about.
And that's not what it looked like on Monday night against the Niners. So, I would like to believe that was a turning point in the season, and that we'll see better defense from here on out.
I'd like to think that it was a little bit of both. I tend to think it was more the fact that it was a Monday night. It was a rivalry game. Pete Carroll just knows how to pump up his players, and the team defense played the best game of the year so far. And I think that is a little bit more of what it is than maybe the defense really gelling, because if they were really gelling, I think they would have had a bigger game. And what I mean by that is they had 3 opportunities at game-ending interceptions, and they just dropped them. 2 of the interceptions that they had were off tips, so credit our defense for making plays when given the opportunity. But they also dropped maybe 4. You also have a play where Jamar Taylor, you could argue that it was a guy slipping, but he and there was terrible refereeing in that game overall as well. But he slips, ends up getting called for a hold, and takes away a great play from Shaquille, who gets an interception and has a great return on it, but it gets called back because Jamar ends up getting called for hold. And there was a lot of plays where they were just really close. And I kind of feel like if the defense was really gelling and really on top of its game, they would have had a bigger and even more disruptive game than they actually did, which I think is pretty incredible considering how disruptive they were. And Jadeveon Clowney, he wins NFC Defensive Player of the Week. I think it was well deserved. And what I remember about that game is I don't like that Monday night crew at all. I really can't stand anyone that talks on that crew. I think they're all just not interesting.
Yeah, they're awful.
But the thing they kept coming back to is Jadeveon Clowney is doing so many things that don't count in the stats. There was that one where Garoppolo is dropping back to pass. Clowney's in his face. He jumps to spike any ball that's coming his way. Garoppolo pulls the ball down and immediately gets sacked by Al Woods, right? There was so many plays like that where Clowney is not the one that gets credit for a stat, but he is the direct result of someone getting a play because of his performance. And we've talked about that all year, how, a few of us have said, like, Jadeveon has been the best defensive player of the year, but he doesn't have the stats to show for it. This was a game where he not only was the best defensive player on the field, but he had the stats to show for it, and he had the stats to help his teammates out, which I think was really impressive. I hope that this is a sign of things to come, but I'm not entirely convinced yet.
I mean, it came with personnel changes as well. I don't think it's a coincidence that, I'm forgetting everybody's name today. Awesome. We brought in a new safety, sort of specifically.
Quandre Diggs had a great game.
Yeah, I mean, like, and he was one of the persons who was making some. I mean, he was kind of like he didn't flagged on a couple, but I mean, he was brought in specifically to be sort of an enforcer type, in my opinion, and he immediately took to that job, and he was also a playmaker. So what we've been talking about, some of the players, like, they seem solid, but nobody's out there like making difference-making plays, and they immediately have they've recognized it. They've been trying to fix it, and I feel like they made a huge step.
I think Quandre Diggs had one of the best debuts for any brand new Seahawk to the team. Jadeveon Clowney had a decent first game against Cincinnati, but Quandre Diggs had a great first game. I think he had I think there was one bad play where he maybe missed a tackle because he 1 and 2 low, and the guy just kind of went around him.
He's gonna have to learn Seahawk tackling because he doesn't Seahawk tackle.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think for the most part, he played a really excellent game. Seahawks were not really beat over top. I want to give a shout out to Shaquille Griffin, who had an amazing defensive play down. It was the last offensive attempt that the 49ers had, and he just puts his hands out, stops a ball that could have taken them to the San Francisco 49ers to a win, because it was just that close. So I want to give a big shout out to him. But yeah, it was a really impressive defensive game, and I'm hoping it's more of what we see. I'm not entirely convinced yet.
No, we're going to have to see it a few more times for it to feel like it's legit.
I just feel like there's a bit of synergy kind of gathering there. Like, you get a better free safety in there. Now maybe a better corner. That's going to shorten. That's going to tighten up some coverage. So that means there's going to be a couple more coverage sacks. And that sort of feeds into other things where the quarterback starts hearing steps, and that means he starts rushing himself. It all sort of feeds, right? This is one of the things I have a problem with analytics. They isolate things you can't isolate in football. It all just changing the free safety can change so much of the game. You take away parts of the field that he wants to throw to. Now he can't throw there. Now he's got to hold the ball longer. Now you got 5 sacks.
Yeah. And that's 5 sacks that they get counted for. That doesn't include the throwaways or the bad throws because someone's in the face.
Yeah, and there was a whole bunch of deer in the light stuff once that started going on, and I don't know. I'm interested to see where that goes from here. Very interested.
I think if this is the beginning of something, that will be great. We need to see more, and I think the final thing I want to say about that defensive game is, the one thing that I'm shocked to say is I'm not seeing a lot of Bobby Wagner. Bobby dropped an interception that could have sealed the win, but I'm just not seeing his impact. I know he's doing a lot of stuff. I know he's very sound. I know he's making the tackles that he needs to make, but I'm just not seeing any highlight, any pop from him, which I'm kind of surprised by.
Yeah, I've been talking about that for a couple of weeks. It's bad because we just signed that contract paying him as the best.
I don't know that it's bad though necessarily.
I would definitely and Ross, to your point, I think that is a concern. I don't think that I'm on the contract concern yet. I'm more saying are we putting Bobby in the best position if he's not in there, because we're playing that base defense where he's roaming back and forth and he's really covering the middle of that field as opposed to getting really to the line of scrimmage.
Right, but that's kind of where he's meant to. I don't know, because you'd think you'd have some interceptions, you'd think you'd have some tips and stuff going on, and
yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say, Zeb?
Oh no, I just feel like he can be playing sound football not making flashy splash plays, but he's playing sound fundamental
Right.
Oh, I agree.
inside linebacker.
But it's not sexy. It's definitely not sexy.
But if you're gonna pay sexy salary, you got to get sexy bang. It's a salary cap world.
It's a sexy game.
I mean, again, obviously, happy that you weren't gonna pay him either. But it's unfortunate when you get trapped into those third contracts where like you have to pay the most they've ever made ever, right at the time where 85-90% of players drop off.
Yeah, it's tough.
For real. I think it's tough,
Very
and
tough.
I think at the end of the year, that's something we're definitely going to want to evaluate.
That's why you don't see Patriots giving out second and especially third contracts.
But that's also why the Patriots are not the Seahawks, and why there are a lot of teams that are not the Patriots.
Well, nobody's the Patriots.
For sure. All right, well,
Did you see that thing the other day? The Seahawks are second in the league at 7 winning seasons in a row.
Oh,
They're
really?
second, and the Patriots are first with 19.
With 19.
Like,
we're only 12 behind. So
And
if they
there's
miss
so-
the playoffs next year,
so many teams are at 0 winning seasons in a
Consecutive,
row
yeah.
and 1 winning season. Like, we're pretty elite if it wasn't for the freaking Patriots.
like think about that. Like if the Patriots didn't make it next year, we'd have to be in the playoffs every year till 2031 to tie.
Wow. Wow.
Unbelievable.
I can't even think about that in time. Like, that boggles my head.
Doesn't even make any sense. I might not even be around in 2030.
All right. Well, let's move on ahead, and we're gonna talk about the future, which is topic number 3. This is the Hawkscast Corner, and we're gonna talk about more Seahawks Twitter. Zeb, what I want to know is this MVP still Russell's to lose? There's a lot of what have you done for me lately, and the fact that he had a bye week, he didn't have a chance to perform comparative to another great quarterback in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I do believe it is his to lose. I think if he finishes out the regular season at the level that he's played so far, unless somebody like Lamar Jackson or there's a couple other guys that you could consider to be in the running, unless they just elevate to the next level, I believe it's Russell's to lose. It's funny. Tuesday morning after the 49ers game, all anybody was talking about was the Seahawks. And then you have a bye week and it's just crickets, right? Like They just literally forget about you when you're not playing. At least for the Seahawks. I don't know if it's like that for everybody, but I think there's a bit of a love affair with Lamar Jackson, which I totally understand. It's almost like people want him to win it. They want to see him pass Russell. I think that there's a lot of love for Russell, but it's just not the same. He doesn't have that flash that Lamar Jackson does. But I believe, like if he finishes out the season and we're, I don't know, anywhere between 12-4, 14-2, challenging for the division. And he's got his 40 touchdowns and his only 3 or 4 picks. I believe he'll win the MVP. So at this point, yeah, I believe 100% it's his to lose at this point.
What do you think Russell needs to do to not just like maintain? Because we talked about like if he continues to have the year that he's having, do you think that maybe because of the type of offense that Russell Wilson plays in, it's going to always hold him back? Because Pete's never going to be the guy that's going to run up the score, right? Do you think that's going to hurt Russell?
I mean, I suppose it could, but I don't think it has so far. I mean, he's pretty clearly having his best season as a quarterback. The world's noticing. They know when they talk about him, they love to point out how he doesn't have anybody around him and that it's all him at this point, which we know that isn't true. But he just has that kind of ability to make somebody who you would consider a nobody look like a somebody. So I don't think that's going to be an issue this year unless we somehow get really conservative over the next 6 games. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Ross, what about you? Where do you think Russell Wilson is in this MVP talk?
You there?
Yeah, Ross. Yeah.
Weird.
cut
For a
out a
second, I
little bit.
lost you there. Second.
Oh, sorry.
This is a hard question for me because I don't think Russell Wilson's going to win it, and I don't think he's even in first place in the consideration right now. And part of it's because of momentum. I mean, people, like Zeb talked about, they didn't play last week, but it's funny how fast, how quick people are willing to just put Russ aside. And it's been a phenomenon his whole career. It's funny because it's almost ironic, but in the real version, the Alanis Morissette version, like he has cultivated a certain image, and it does serve him in many, many ways. Very, very polished and very, very, but because of that, also, it has always rubbed some people a little bit the wrong way, and people do not feel they know him sometimes. And I feel like there's just like a little bit of a gap. He's not necessarily one of the cool kids, and something about Lamar Jackson makes Lamar Jackson a cool kid. And because Lamar Jackson's basically doing what Russell did a couple years ago when he ended up having to run for 850 yards as well, right?
Right.
Yep.
And so it's going to be that similar. I mean, he may run for 1,000 yards, which is a little bit more, but still, like Russell Wilson was literally doing it all. Wasn't quite as good anymore, and we didn't have Marshawn Lynch that year. He was doing everything, and he didn't win it that year. And so very, very similar years. But this week, over and over on Twitter, I see it between Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott. I mean, like Russell Wilson's even dropped out of the conversation on some of these things. It's bizarre to me. We have but it seems to come partly down to anyway to personality. There's just something about Russell Wilson that people don't. They respect him. I don't think even people call him fake anymore because you know what? You don't go to a children's hospital every Tuesday for 8 years if you're fake.
Right. You take a break every once in a while.
Right? But I don't know. There's just something about Russ's character that people don't quite fall in love with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Lamar Jackson's got because I even think Russell Wilson does have a certain kind of charisma. But even that's sort of somewhere like when he first came into the league, he had a little bit more like I'm the super underdog guy going on. But now he's opened the door for so many similar types. You don't even really, we don't talk about how much of an underdog he was. We don't talk even about his height as much anymore.
Right.
He's been doing it for so long. He's almost like a victim of his success. It's a mystery to me. I'm trying to sit there trying to pin it down. I'm not going to be able to, but he's not going to win it, and I can't exactly figure out why. It's one of those sort of vague intangibles, right? And it's sad. It sucks. It's kind of I feel like it's gonna, and who knows? It may even be slightly a product of where he plays. There is a little bit of when you're in Washington State and you're isolated, not as many people feel affectionate for that area. I don't know, man. He's not going to win it. As soon as he gets a week off, people don't talk about him.
Well, you got no more weeks off.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that's always going to be hard. And it's always going to come to, like, what have you done for me lately? And having that bye week after having a big team win where he wasn't, like, the biggest star in that game, I think does hurt him. You counter that against what Lamar Jackson has done in the last 2 weeks, where he's had, I think, 8 touchdowns total. It's really hard to say, like, wow, that guy's on the upswing, and the other guy that we haven't seen for a week is on the downswing.
The only way I think Russell has a chance is if, like, defenses catch up to the Ravens, and if Dak cools off.
Well, that's the thing with Dak that I don't get. Like, I understand, like, efficiency-wise, he's doing really well in ESPN's QBR rating, but the dude has 6 wins and a terrible division, right? Like,
did Troy Aikman ever win? I wonder.
Yeah.
Because Dak Prescott seems to me like the modern iteration of Troy Aikman. Like, they're good, but I don't think they're MVP types.
I mean, to think about it this way, this is really the first game that Dak Prescott won this last weekend, where he threw for over 400 yards, where Ezekiel Elliott did not have a good game, but they still won because Dak played so well. That's like the first game. And I think that's one of those things that, because it's the most recent example, that's what also everyone has in their head. Birdfinger chiming in and saying that Jackson's a favorite in Vegas and Wilson is second. I think what will happen is it is Russell Wilson's MVP to lose because his efficiency is so high. He is so good at that consistency. He's so just ice in his veins. The moment is never too big for him. We haven't seen that pressure on Lamar Jackson yet, and maybe we won't this year. But I think Russell Wilson, like Zeb said, if he continues on this current track, at the end of the day, it will be hard to refute all the amazing things that Russell Wilson has done because currently he is leading the NFL in 4 categories. He's leading the league in passing touchdowns, touchdown percentage, interception percentage, and quarterback rating. He still has 6 more games to go.
But the people who chose that's not... It's funny. Probably because of Russell Wilson, like Lamar Jackson's style of play is seen as more legitimate than it used to be. Like when maybe perhaps there's something to the argument that when Russell Wilson had his 850 yards rushing and 3,400 yards passing and 34 touchdowns that year, I think.
They weren't in the same year, yeah.
Or maybe it was 2032. I forget. It wasn't seen quite as legit because like running doesn't count because you're a quarterback.
Right.
But since he's been, but every year he's, again, partly because of Russell Wilson legitimizing a more athletic, a more mobile, I don't want to call him, he's not, but a more athletic type of quarterback. Now those stats are kind of more legitimized as well. So Lamar Jackson gets to include his rushing yards and his rushing touchdowns into it. And now in the past, these numbers, you say, well, yeah, but Russell Wilson's like yards weren't there. His touchdowns weren't there. His touchdown rate's always been there, but his touchdowns always. Now it is, yeah, but now we're going to move the goalposts partly because of his own success. And now it doesn't matter. Now it's going to be Lamar Jackson, 800 or 1,000-yard rushing, plus to go along with his 2,500 yards passing or whatever, and 20 touchdowns passing, but 10 more rushing. I don't know, man.
I think to your point of what it is Russell is ahead of the curve. He made running and passing his game as opposed to guys like Cam Newton or what we're seeing with Lamar Jackson or even Michael Vick. It was always, the electric running play is his biggest asset. It's not his arm, it's not his accuracy, it's not anything else. It's just like, he can throw the ball kinda, but he can run so well. Russ has been like, I'm just going to pass, and when I need to, I'll make that run. And that's the thing. He loses credit for being as good as he is because he's never had to struggle. He's never had to work past it. If you compare Russell Wilson's game versus Lamar Jackson's game, they're really quite different. And one of the things that I want to give credit to the Ravens is what they've done with Lamar Jackson in these last 6 weeks is they've really limited his passing. We've always talked about Russell's efficiency, and if you give him 20 passes where he only has to throw 20 times in a game, they're often going to win. And that's really kind of what the Ravens have done. These are his passing attempts over the last 4 games, and these are all wins. 20, 23, 17, 24. So that's his passing attempts, and they're winning. And to Jackson's credit, he's turning a lot of those passes into touchdowns because he had 7 passing touchdowns in the last 2 games. But that was Russell Wilson's game. Russell Wilson's game was doing those kind of things. I'm going to get 3 touchdowns on 15 completed passes. Mm-hmm. And he was on his way in that game, if not for a really great play by the Niners linebacker.
Yeah, like you said though, the Russell Wilson's maybe always been ahead of the curve, and people like that sometimes don't get recognized until their careers are over. Whether it's in sports or art or whatever.
And I think to your point is people are just kind of expecting Russell to do it now, so it's not impressive anymore.
Yep. Like
Tom Brady did not get recognition as a true MVP candidate until he threw 50 touchdowns.
That's right. I mean, it's things like this week actually hurt him. This week he's not going to be on national TV.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that the game was flexed because you know what? The Eagles, if they win that game and Dallas loses, the Eagles are tied for their thing. They're not bad.
Yeah, but I don't know why Fox didn't protect Green Bay and San Francisco, but that's from a national perspective. It's an 8 and 9 win team is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
Well, it used to have to be sort of extreme for it to be changed.
Yeah, I mean, 5-5 is not sexy. But speaking of not sexy, that is topic number 4. Topic number 4, Ross, is the Philadelphia Eagles, and I gotta know, are the Eagles still living in the shadow of their Super Bowl win?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when they made that win, you talked about all the young talent on that team, and there was a lot of talk that I guess that happens almost every time though. That this is their window is going to be huge, and they're going to be rolling on that win for a long time, but it just hasn't happened for them. I don't know if it's bad luck, so a series of unhappy coincidences makes that perception. So, but it's not really true. But it just feels like sort of mission accomplished to move on, and now they've lost focus, and it's been a sort of a combination of things, injuries and inconsistencies, and that there was something, maybe, to be honest, a little fluky about the Super Bowl year. It's not every team that can switch quarterbacks because of injury in December, but still, go on and win the Super Bowl. I don't know, man. It makes me wonder, like, how good they ever were, and if they just happen to get hot one season at the right time. Are we underselling them? Maybe.
That's all it takes sometimes. You just got to get hot at the right time, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything just has to gel for, like, if you're playing 500 ball, but then the last 4 weeks things just come together for you, and then you got a couple weeks in the playoffs, that can be enough. You can have like a 6-week push and get yourself to the Super Bowl occasionally, right?
Dude, the Ravens in 2012,
Yeah,
they were awful. They were talking about coaching changes and all this stuff, and then they just turned it on at the end of the year, made it happen.
Yeah, totally. There was a year where you felt like, I forget, it was in the late 80s, 87, where it looked like the Seahawks were going to do that. They all of a sudden, the last 4 games of the regular season, they killed everybody, like 2 or 3 shutouts in the last 4 games. Ended up missing the playoffs still by 1 game. If they had gone to the playoffs, that was probably a Super Bowl.
I think they beat both the Super Bowl teams that year too, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just one of those things. If they just gotten one little break going their way, if somebody else had lost a game, they'd be in, and that was probably, we would be talking about, we would have had 4 Super Bowl appearances, not 3. Oh well.
Zeb, what about you? Do you think Eagles are living in the past?
I don't know. I suppose I really have not seen much Eagles football this year, so I can't speak with any kind of certainty or legitimacy to how they're really playing. I see their record, and they're clearly not don't appear to be a team that's going to be playing for a Super Bowl this year. So
they seem kind of broken. Their offense doesn't work. They've, like, Zach Ertz is having an off year. If you have him in fantasy, but he's still their leading receiver. After Deshaun Jackson got hurt after the first or second game, they don't have any wide receivers that are a deep threat at all. Like, their best wide receiver is averaging something like 12 yards per catch for going deep.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Carson Wentz isn't having a great season. His completion percentage is pretty low. Touchdown interception ratio is okay, but I don't know. I just
yards per completion is bad.
Yeah. So I don't know if it necessarily has anything to do with what happened 2 seasons ago, but I suppose you could say that they're still living in the shadow of the Super Bowl when they haven't done much since, right?
Yeah, some teams sort of sell out so much to get to a Super Bowl that the years after it's not just the next year. It's just things just kind of fall apart, right?
Yeah.
And the chemistry goes away. I don't know.
Maybe the Rams could be a team that is doing something similar to that right now.
Yeah,
we're in the middle of the Rams, basically just like turning mediocre overnight.
They mortgaged everything to get there, and now it's going to come back.
You hate to see it.
Nah, I'm pretty happy to see that. I'm kind of happy to see all the Sean McVay disciples and like fans for Sean McVay lifestyle kind of like, oh, maybe he's not like the next guy. He's not the next Bill Belichick.
You can't just hire his gardener and expect him to get you to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think what we're seeing with the Eagles is it just shows you how hard it is to maintain success. You know, the Eagles last year, they made the playoffs. They were the number 6 seed in the NFC behind Seattle. They end up going on and winning their divisional game. The Seahawks did not. So it's not like they're just like totally falling off the earth, but they're also not a team that I think a lot of people are like really scared to face, because when you think about the Eagles, when you think about Carson Wentz, I don't know if you're necessarily thinking about like, oh, this is like what we expect this team to be like. And it's kind of hard to say what a team is going to be when they're 5-5. They're just kind of a middle of the road team that we kind of talked about early in the game. Doesn't mean that they should be taken lightly, but they're also not a team that you're overly like scared by, as you were saying, Ross. Like, they're not scary. Yeah, you could still lose to them, and maybe that's a fear that I have. But I think, like you guys were saying, you sell out for that win, and you kind of just exhale, and you don't take everything as like seriously as you did before you win a game, because until you've been there, you're just hungry for it. You're going to do everything. You're going to put in that extra 30 minutes of work because you will see the benefits of it. Whereas before, you say like, I've done it before, I know what I'm doing, we'll be fine. And maybe that's what they've lost. People maybe think that's what happened to Seattle, but it's kind of hard to say that that's what happened when we're still talking about it 6 and 7 years later, where they've made the playoffs 5 of those past 6 years, and they're still, you know, making opportunities and going into the playoffs and winning games. So last year was the first time they did not win at least one playoff game. So we'll see. But is this a team that you're scared of?
If you are, then you need to go see the Wizard of Oz to get yourself some courage.
Get some of that liquid courage.
You shouldn't be afraid of the Eagles this year. I mean, it feels like I've heard some rumors, you know, here and there, that even like there's some issues with Wentz, that maybe he's not a leader. So who knows what kind of issues they're having, but I don't think it translates into a really successful run this year for them.
Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah. Although he does look, you know, if anybody in the NFL, he does look the most like a British royal.
Yeah, that
Looks
is
like-
absolutely the truth.
Looks like Harry, Prince Harry.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know the difference. I don't know either of them that well by sight. So if I walked into a room and they were both standing there, I wouldn't know like which one to like call which name. I would have no idea.
They're pretty close. Maybe they're what they're wearing might be a tell. Kind of
Maybe
outfit they have on.
if
By
one
the
of them
way-
has like a Prince outfit on,
Yeah, exactly. Troy
the
Aikman
big
never
white
won it.
sash. I don't see Carson Wentz wearing like bright red jackets with sashes across it.
No.
But who
not
knows?
happening. Troy Aikman never won an MVP, by the way.
Good. I mean,
In
no
fact-
offense, Troy.
Emmett Smith in 1993 is the only Cowboy to ever win the award.
America's team my ass.
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's move on. Final thoughts about the Eagles.
Were
All
the
right.
1979 Eagles really more interesting? I think so. Dick Vermeil was their coach. Ron Jarowski was their quarterback. Harold Carmichael, like the early prototype of the tall receiver. Can we talk about them? They had that guy. Who was that guy? Mark Wahlberg's thing. That movie. He made that movie.
Oh,
Invincible or
Invincible.
Invincible.
Yeah. That was the 1979 Eagles. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about the 1979 Eagles.
I liked the early 90s Eagles with Randall Cunningham and Reggie White.
You dig that kind of team, huh? That was
yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about the expectations for the game, and let's do some predictions. Ross, I'm going to hit you up first for our predictions. What is going to be
Yes.
the final score? Seahawks at Eagles.
I think it's going to be surprisingly lopsided, and it's going to be something like 30. Wait a second. Let me wave my magic wand. 31-10.
31. Whoa.
21, 3 touchdowns. That's right.
All right.
I like it.
What's your prediction?
Yeah, I'll go 30-13.
Uh,
Price is writing me, Judge.
That's
You
the
gonna allow
nature.
that?
That's the nature of the game.
Birdfinger is
Judge?
calling a 31-17 win over the Seahawks. He initially wrote in Eagles. I don't know if that's a slip, but I'm a little worried about this game. Kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's a 500 team. They're fighting for their life. Seahawks are coming off a big win. They had a bye week. I don't know how jazzed they're going to be coming off that big win. Maybe Pete gets them reset, but I'm going to say the Eagles squeak out a win, maybe to put some reverse jujus out there, and I say the Eagles win 21-20.
What the hell?
I don't know. I'm worried. I'm worried that this is like a classic trap game. You have a team coming off a huge high of a win. They have to travel on the road off of a bye, and it's a 10 a.m.
Do you
game.
believe in trap wins? Do you believe in trap games?
I don't believe in trap games, but I think people are susceptible to them. Like, I don't think that I would fall into that, but I have never been a performance athlete to the level of those 53 men.
Holmgren's teams somehow were susceptible to that type of thing, and 10 o'clock mornings and stuff like that. They seem to be very mentally fragile for whatever reason. I don't think Pete Carroll's teams, even the games they've lost, you thought they should have won. I don't think it's because they were traps. There was like division games are always tough, and that kind of, or like, what's his name? Jeff Fisher just like was obsessed with the Seahawks, and that's all he cared about.
Yeah, and you know, like, I was wrong last week. I could be wrong, or wrong last game.
Yeah, you.
I could be wrong again. I just feel like this is a game that maybe comes to bite us, and I think that I don't believe in the defense yet, so I'm not like fully trusting.
Sammy, do you fear success?
No, I love success. I love it.
Is this something we should devote some time to?
We have to dedicate a whole podcast to that.
You're afraid of success.
We're invincible at 10 a.m.
Okay, all right. We are 5-0 on the road. If we're 6-0 on the road, I will be. I don't care what we are. Get in the playoffs, and that's going to cause damage. Prediction number 2: who's going to have more passing yards, Ross? Russell Wilson or Carson Wentz?
I'm going to go with the WI over the WE. Russell.
Yep, Russell.
I also believe that Russ is going to have more passing yards. I don't think it's going to help him, but I think he will. Who's going to have?
I don't think it's like a tremendous amount, but it's going to be good.
Yeah,
like
one extra yard is all it needs. Who's going to have more cuts to their Super Bowl win? The Eagles or the Seahawks?
The Eagles, but in a twist, it won't be like, oh my God, this is how great they were. It'll be more like, this is what they used to be. It'll be like in a negative sense. But it'll be more, yeah, because the Eagles are much more recent. I mean, like, sadly, the Seahawks Super Bowl win is becoming sort of ancient history now.
Yeah, 2004, 2013?
18th greatest team of all time.
Yeah.
People forget about it.
I think my prediction is the Seahawks are going to have more shots to their Super Bowl win because Russell Wilson actually won a game and not Carson Wentz.
That's a good point. However.
All right, next prediction. Over under Seahawks rushing yards, 125.
Including Russ, over.
Over.
I'm going to say under. I'm not confident in the running game right now. I thought we did okay.
You are a Sammy Downer, not a Debbie Downer. You are
I'm
a Sammy
questioning
Downer.
things, okay? I'm transitioning right now into my Seahawks belief. I don't want to go too high. I don't want to fly too close to the sun. Birdfinger says over. Over under passing yards, 250 for the Seahawks.
Just barely over.
Okay.
260.
Just barely under.
I'm going to say over. I think Russ will have a decent game because they're not going to do very well on the ground. Over under defensive sacks, 2.
The Eagles give up an average of 2.5 sacks a game. I think with our new coverage, we're going to be slightly over the average, so I'm going to go over, barely 3.
Yeah, I'll go over as well.
Man, you guys are so optimistic. I don't know yet.
Dude, we're 8-2. What's
I know
wrong
we're
with
8-2,
you?
but
2. The weakest 8-2 of all time, but 2.
I'm usually the optimistic one. I feel like the three of us,
You
but I'm
are.
just not like feeling this game, so I'm going to say under. This one's a fun
I'm
one
usually the one
because
that's
we
kind of
talked about you kind of ignore what the Seahawks do in the first quarter. Over under 3.5 points for the Seahawks in the first quarter. Yeah, you like that one?
I'll go under on this one. I'll go under.
Hmm.
Because you can't win the game in the first quarter, you know.
That is true. That is very true.
Cannot win you can't even win in the fourth quarter lately. You got to win it over.
I'm going to go over. I think this is more likely to be similar to the Falcons or Steelers game than it is going to be to any of the other ones.
I'm going to say over. I'm going to say they get 2 field goals. Jason Myers is turned it around.
I hope you're right.
And
Yeah, I mean,
the final prediction for the game, over under 2.5 Josh Gordon catches.
Can we talk about Hollister rather than Josh Gordon?
No, Josh Gordon had 2 big catches in that game. Both converted third downs.
I know what I really liked about him is the first one especially, like that slant. Like we don't have anybody else who. I mean, Metcalf looks get there, but like right now, Josh Gordon is probably like the only person on the team who can run like the slant that well.
Oh, for sure.
Like Russell will feel like confident to throw it in there. I still don't think he's going to become like this major role, like major cog in the offense. I think he's a role player. I see him generally getting 2 catches a day. He could go 3 on this one, but I'm going to go with 2. 2 catches, 22 yards.
Okay, Zeb.
I see him getting a little more involved. I'm going to say over, probably more like 4 catches.
He can't because I have Metcalf on a buttload of teams, dude. And like, I'm doing Stop it.
I'm gonna go over. I think that our receiver core is maybe a little bit more depleted than we will expect. So Josh Gordon getting 4 catches, I see as the realm of possibility.
So related to this, if our WR3, our third wide receiver, if he's only getting 3 catches a day, do we need 7 wide receivers?
No, and that's why.
Should Moore or Brown be cut so we can bring in some more depth at defensive back or offensive line?
I would probably, if I have to choose between Moore, Ursa, and Brown, I'm probably letting go of Jaron Brown because he's more expensive and is less likely a part of our future.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. By the way, Gary Jennings?
Yes.
Yep.
IR'd for the
Gary
year.
Jennings.
Yeah,
he just got IR. He played. So they took him off of our. Whatever.
A roster.
And then they put him on their roster. He played 1 down, and then they IR'd him.
Oh no, we cut him.
Right,
and
but we were going to put him back on a train. We were going to put him back on practice squad. So they took him and put him on their 53-man roster. Played him for 1 game, played him 1 down, and then IR'd him so they get him next year. I'm calling shenanigans.
that is shenanigans.
That is shenanigans.
Well, it's not that much different from the Seahawks putting. Not that much different from putting T2 on IR, saying, like, "Oh, just hip injury."
That dude totally stubbed his toe.
Yeah, totally. Gentlemen, that is the show for tonight. Shout outs.
Different because you can't steal people from other people's teams. There's like an unspoken rule.
They played Emma down. That's all they needed to do.
That's bullshit.
It's the rules. What are you going to do?
I got some shout outs.
Okay, let's hear your shout outs.
Shout outs to Cara Cynthia Dune and to my Charlie Nicholson.
Wait, say the first one again.
Cara Cynthia Dune.
Is that one name?
Cara Cynthia Dune.
Is that like commas or like one name? Like that's one person.
One person.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you know the people with the coolest.
Well, I don't know her. She's in The Mandalorian. That's all I know about her.
Wait, who is she?
We haven't seen her yet.
Oh wait, that's a name of a character.
Portrayed by Gina Carano, former MMA fighter Gina Carano.
Oh, dude, I don't pay attention to names. I don't watch the
you haven't seen her yet. Don't worry, you're not missing anything.
Wait, are you guys already in episode 3?
No, I'm telling you, the episode's not out yet. No one knows when she's showing up.
I see. Okay, I'm
I'll shout her out whenever I want to, though.
You can. I'm going to shout out. Who's that guy? Who's wicked?
Warwick Davis?
Yeah, Warwick Davis. I'm shouting him out. You know why. He knows why.
Dude, I met Warwick Davis. He's a super nice guy. Shout out to the Seahawks. Thanks for keeping us entertained through 10 weeks. I didn't predict a win, but I'm hopeful. We are the Hawkscast Podcast. Please go check us out on Hawkscast Forum. We're online on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast and Seahawks Forum. We got lots of stuff to talk about. If you like stuff other than football, we got a great forum. There's a great thread on The Mandalorian. Not any spoilers, I believe. Very minimal, if at all. Shout out to Tommy and to Birdfinger for checking out the chat live. There's Zeb and Ross. I am Sam. This is the Hawkscast Podcast, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.